Today, we're diving deep into XRP. It's one of the most talked about and honestly, one of the most polarizing assets in the entire digital economy. And it was built from day one with a single, absolutely massive goal: to revolutionize how money moves around the planet. To really get your head around this mission, you have to start with this number: $150 trillion. That's how much money flowed across borders back in 2022. And it's on track to hit $250 trillion by 2027. This right here is the ocean that XRP was designed to swim in. But here's the catch. The system that's moving all this value, it's ancient. It's built on technology that's decades old. You know, trying to send money internationally today can feel like you're shipping a package back in the 1970s. In a world that's so hyper-connected, this is a massive, glaring problem. So what if you could just bypass that old, creaky system altogether? What if there was a technology that could make every single one of those payments settle in a blink of an eye and cost next to nothing? Well, this is the very battleground where XRP is making it stand. All right, so first, we need to understand the reigning champion. I'm talking about the system that pretty much every bank, from the global giants down to your local credit union, has to rely on. And that system is called SWIFT. Now, the crucial thing to get here is that SWIFT, which was created way back in 1973, doesn't actually send the money. The best way to think about it is like a secure text messaging service for banks. It just sends the payment instructions, not the cash itself. The actual funds have to move separately through this whole messy chain of other banks. And the consequences of that are pretty clear. A single transfer across borders can take up to 5 whole days to finally land. Why? Because your money has to hop between several different correspondent banks, and each one of those banks takes time, and of course, they take a cut. So the result is a system that's painfully slow, shockingly expensive, and way more complicated than it needs to be. So now let's look at the challenger, a technology that was literally designed from the ground up to fix these exact problems. And this is Ripple and its native digital asset, XRP. It's really important to separate those two. The XRP Ledger is the underlying blockchain technology, kind of like the railroad tracks. And XRP is the asset, the train that runs on those tracks. The whole system was built to be a direct alternative to SWIFT, but for the digital age. So how fast is it? Well, forget 1 to 5 days. Transactions on the XRP Ledger settle in just 3 to 5 seconds. And the cost? This is where it gets wild. It drops from as much as $50 per transaction down to a tiny fraction of a single penny. It's that combo, almost instant speed and almost zero cost, that makes this whole thing so potentially disruptive. Okay, so how does it actually pull this off? Well, XRP is designed to be what's called a bridge currency. Let's say you want to send Mexican pesos and have them arrive in someone's account as Thai baht. Instead of that slow, expensive route through multiple banks, the process is incredibly simple. You convert the pesos to XRP, send the XRP across the world in seconds, and then convert it into baht on the other side. It completely removes the need for that whole chain of middlemen. But if the tech is so much better, why hasn't it just completely taken over? Well, this is where the story gets really complicated. The road to adoption has been anything but smooth. XRP has faced these massive challenges, both in the courtroom and in the court of public opinion. The single biggest obstacle, no question, has been a monumental legal battle. Back in 2020, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, sued Ripple. They claimed that XRP was an illegal, unregistered security. For years, this cast a giant shadow over the entire project. Now, a 2023 court ruling was a huge win for Ripple. It found that sales on public exchanges were not securities. But the case and all its appeals are still dragging on. And that regulatory uncertainty, it's been a massive brake on getting big institutions on board. And beyond just the legal stuff, there's this ongoing philosophical debate. Is XRP really decentralized? So, on one hand, critics will point out that all 100 billion XRP were created at once. It's called a pre-mine, and most were given to the company and its founders. They say that makes it too centralized. But the defenders push back hard. They argue that Ripple, the company, can't just change the rules on its own. any change requires an 80% vote from independent computers or validators all over the world. They say owning the tokens doesn't mean you control the network. And this debate, it's absolutely key to whether big institutions will ever fully trust, and that trust issue is very real. Despite some big-name partnerships, the actual use of XRP on its own public network by major banks has been pretty slow. As Ripple's own CTO, David Schwartz, says right here, institutions have mostly preferred to use these assets off-chain, which basically means in their own private walled-off systems. He's optimistic that's about to change, but it really shines a light on a major hurdle to adoption. So facing all these headwinds, the legal fight, the centralization debate, the slow adoption, Ripple had to evolve. It started shifting its strategy to create value and demand for XRP that goes way beyond just being a simple bridge for payment. So the new game plan is all about diversification. Ripple is now pushing its technology into the hottest new areas of finance. We're talking DeFi, or decentralized finance, asset tokenization, which is the idea of putting real-world things like real estate on a blockchain, and maybe biggest of all, acting as the technological backbone for official central bank digital currencies. And this pivot, especially towards tokenization, might just be the most ambitious and potentially world-changing part of XRP's entire story. So let's unpack what that could really mean. And you can already see this happening. This isn't just a theory. Ripple is actively working with countries like the Republic of Palau, using its tech to help them build their own national digital currency, their own CBDC. Now think about the big picture. If you have a future with dozens of different national digital currencies, XRP could position itself as the perfect, neutral, go-between asset that lets them all talk to each other instantly. And the potential size of this market is just staggering. We're not just talking about payments anymore. The market for asset tokenization, turning things like stocks, bonds, and real estate into digital tokens, is projected by the Boston Consulting Group to be a $16 trillion opportunity by 2030. If XRP's technology can capture even a tiny slice of that, the demand would be enormous. Which brings us to the final question, the one that really wraps this all up. Technologically, XRP has a pretty clear advantage over the old, slow world of finance, but its entire journey has been shaped by this controversial beginning and a really brutal legal fight. As it pivots to this new tokenized future, you have to wonder, is its real battle against Swift and the old guard? Or is it against the shadows of its own past? Can its utility finally, once and for all, overcome all that deep-seated skepticism? That is the multi-trillion-dollar question.